Not that we have all rights equally, again, like driving, voting, etc. But there are some things we shouldn't have to explain. We're all equal, self-evident. Where does that break down historically in society where you have injustices? Well, the value of individuals isn't based on their existence. It's based on their appearances or abilities, and that's what's happening when you pick consciousness. It's appearance, abilities, age.
You have to apply that to other intelligent species too. You go, they must also be innately valuable because they innately value themselves.
And again, you can debate bringing some species up. Can't we agree amongst our own we're all equal? And the only thing we all share is the human nature, because from fertilization onwards, there's changes in degree to everything about us. None of us in this room right now, even when our consciousness level perhaps are totally the same. Certainly our intellectual abilities aren't the same, but our identity in the human species is the same. And so the question is, if we're all equal, we need to be treated equally. Any other questions? Yes?
So when we go back to this graph, we go, well, humans are whole when they're at fertilization. So if you look at the zygote, it goes through this 1 to 8 cell stage where all of the cells are stem cells, are omnipotent, and if you pluck one of them from 8, you are still going to get a human developing from one cell. So can you say that at the 8 cell stage, each of those cells are potentially human, but they are not individually human because together they're only one?
The fact that you can take something from someone and, in a very rare case, magically make them 2 or 3 or however many we take, right, doesn't mean before we do that they didn't exist. For example, there's a particular type of worm that if you cut it in half, instead of having a dead worm on the table, 2 worms begin to crawl. Well, prior to the cutting, we wouldn't say that's a potential worm. We would say that's an actual worm, which has this interesting ability to split into 2. But if it doesn't split, it exists on its own. And even if it does split, prior to the split, it existed on its own. So I would say at fertilization, if we don't play with the human being very early in its development, it's not potentially 8 people or potentially 1 person rather. It is 1 person. And if we make 2 people, or naturally the person splits into 2, because that's what twinning is. Identical twins are the embryo splits into 2. It doesn't mean prior to the split, it didn't exist. You actually had 1 person existing. It just means that sometimes 2 people, for example, can exist.
So then, each one of those, if you take a stem cell that is from the 8 cell stage, say, and then you kill it before it is a human, then that is not enough.
No, if you take, well, first of all, as I understand, if you take a stem cell from the embryo, you're going to kill the embryo. That's why embryonic stem cell research is objectionable. I've also not heard that in removing a stem cell, you then have another embryo, but that you can coax that stem cell to develop into different parts, but you actually don't have a whole. But the embryo by itself is a whole. The embryo has everything it needs within itself to move to the fetal stage, the infancy stage, etc. The one lone stem cell, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, can be coaxed to develop into a part, correct? And then so in that particular case, we're actually not taking the part to have the 1 original human and a second human, but we're taking the part, let's say, to create some the part being stem cell, to coax it to establish another part. But in doing that, I kill the original embryo. And therefore, it would be equivalent to me taking your heart to give it to someone who needs a heart transplant. I may be achieving some good end, namely someone who needed a heart transplant who died, but I killed you to do that, so it's wrong. So if in removing the stem cell, I kill the embryo, which is what happens, then it's wrong, no matter how much good I can bring by coaxing that stem cell to develop into some part that will supposedly help another. Good question. Any other questions? Yes?
On the plus side for everybody, they're finding ways to make stem cells from skin cells now.
Well, actually, thanks for bringing that up. That's true. There are many great sources of adult stem cells. So the skin, after a woman's delivered a baby, the umbilical cord blood, the placenta, these are rich in stem cells. And actually, if you look at the studies of stem not been any positive results with embryonic stem cell research. So interestingly, people are pushing for something I would, as I've explained, consider unethical, but it's even unnecessary because we're getting good results from adult stem cell research. Yes?
Although, what you just said made me think about something. So you're in favor of using embryonic stem cells for health and that sort of thing. It
Oh no. Embryonic stem cells? No.
Oh, sorry, I mean, placenta, you know.
Adult
placenta.
stem cells. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are living, single-celled organisms with the DNA of a human being. They are identical to the stem cells that are in the womb right after conception, right? In the zygote and the 8-celled organism. Why should those be allowed to be wasted, you know, in the placenta and that sort of thing? Yet the one in the womb needs to be preserved. Even though
Good question.
they are exactly the same thing.
And that's the difference. I would say they're not. Parts versus wholes. Parts versus wholes. The stem cell is not a whole being. For example, take a cell and put it in my uterus. It's not going to grow and develop through the stages of human development. Put the zygote, after it's spent a few days in the fallopian tube, into the uterus. It will grow and develop through the stages of human development. So the zygote needs nothing external, needs nothing internally done to it, rather. It just needs to be in the right environment to grow and develop. But a cell, a skin cell, for example, or something like that, or stem cells you could say extract from the placenta, do not, on their own, have the ability to grow and develop through the stages of human development. So they are parts versus the embryo, which is a whole.
But
That would be the difference.
what this lady said about the 8-cell stage, right? At that stage, are all the cells identical?
So, and then after it divides into the 16 cell, each cell becomes differentiated. So I think with the adult stem cells, they're not really the same as the 8 cells because they are in some way differentiated and they won't become a whole human.
I see.
But if you take one of the cells from the embryo in the, say, 5-cell stage, or 6-cell stage, or 8-cell stage, right, 0, 2, 4, 8, it can be coaxed to develop a part, not a second embryo, correct?
I believe that it's in the 8-cell stage, they're still omnipotent stem cells, so they should, and well, in theory anyway, be able to develop into a whole human. Just like when you have twins, you have one cell dividing into 2 and then splitting. That's actually kind of like a 2-cell, right? Then you have each developing into a human. I believe that is possible with the 8 cells.
So I'm not sure about that, but if in that case it splits, then you have a separate human and you have to treat it like a human. But as you pointed out, an adult stem cell is different from the embryonic stem cell. And an adult stem cell by itself does not have everything it needs within it to move through the stages of human development, correct? It would be accurately described as a part, not a whole.
But the thing that's
So that would be the difference, parts versus wholes. If you can, let me give you a case of cloning. Okay, so normal reproduction is we have the fertilization, the sperm, 22 chromosomes, the egg, 22 chromosomes, they come together, 46 chromosomes. With cloning, what happens is we take an egg, we enucleate it, so take out its DNA, then we take my skin cell, which has 46 chromosomes, so my identity in it, my genetic identity, put that in the egg, and then we have to do some stuff to it, zap it, and we can actually have it begin to do what happens at fertilization, go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, and continue to multiply. Once the zapping has occurred in cloning, I would say what you have, that cloned individual, is equal to the embryo and needs to be treated as that. But prior to, because that process would be equivalent to fertilization, but prior to that, when you just have the egg cell and you just have the skin cell, you have